Hello and a warm welcome. You're watching my YouTube station, Smita Sharma, journalist. And on this broadcast this evening, I have Johny here with me, who's the international affairs editor for The Hindu, a prolific writer and an author. And he joins me to talk about the kind of visible public split between the United States and Israel. And the reason, of course, there have been several media reports in the past few days that we have read about Donald Trump giving a piece of his mind to Netanyahu. But there are always those questions whether it's only meant for public posturing. But J.D. Vance, the US Vice President, in his press conference, following the deal that has been signed between Tehran and Washington, D.C., the Islamabad Accord, where Pakistan is the guarantor, he has made some very sharp remarks. Now, before I get Stanley into the conversation, let me just play out a very short clip of that comment that has sort of sent out a signal that the relationship is undergoing a fundamental shift as far as Washington, D.C. and Tel Aviv are concerned.
To some of these cabinet members in Israel who are attacking the President of the United States, the other thing that I would say is that over the last 3 months, 2/3 of the defensive weapons that have protected your homeland have been built by American hands and paid for by American tax dollars. The problem for Israel is not Donald J. Trump. And anybody in Israel who thinks their biggest problem is the President of the United States needs to wake up and smell the reality of the situation that country is in.
Okay. Stanley, thank you for joining me here. Quite the outburst there. I mean, if you look at the entirety of the comments that has been made, he even went to the extent of saying that if I were in the cabinet in the Israeli alley, really, I would wake up and smell the reality and see the reality. Your first reaction to what you saw?
I mean, what Vance said was, quite something. I mean, I was listening to both the podcast and the press conference yesterday. In the podcast, Vance said that Israel cannot just kill out of every security challenges Israel is facing. That was also, I think, quite remarkable for an American vice president to say. So these are the things people like us who have been watching Israel have been saying for quite some time, because the way Israel has been fighting in the region, Israel has taken the war to the extremes where it was not sustainable anymore. But now you listen to this from the American president and the vice president, because you look at the press conference of President Trump from France on the sidelines of the G7. Trump had also made some very interesting comments. He said that Israel has taken, the war with Hezbollah is taking too long. He said you can't knock out an apartment complex every time you find someone in Beirut. So he publicly reprimanded Israel from striking Beirut. And then he said that if Israel is not able to fight Hezbollah, Golani will do it. Golani is the former Al-Qaeda guy who's now running Syria. So basically Trump is saying that, you are not able to do this. This guy can do that. So, it's very interesting. It's quite interesting that you're hearing these things coming out of the American elite. The public opinion in the United States has shifted. You look at the polls and then you could clearly see that public opinion has clearly shifted in the United States. But the American elite had always stood by Israel, even in the past. So there were instances where American presidents had pulled the Israeli prime ministers, but I don't remember any instance where the president and the vice president had used such harsh language about Israel. Because
and that's a very important point you made about this public shift that is also visible in the way some of the resolutions have been voted in the US Congress recently, where Republicans have joined hands with Democrats, or the younger Americans actually now, according to the polls, being way more sort of empathetic towards the Palestinian cause. And J.D. Vance, in that New York Times podcast that you referred to, going to the extent of saying that 2/3 of the weapons that have been protecting Israel have been built by American hands, paid for by American dollars, and we have been protecting your lives. So do you see that this is a kind of a break point, in relationship, that if Israel is not restrained at this point in time, you could actually see a more major sort of a split happening?
So what we have seen clearly is a rift. There is a clear rift this time. Many people argue that no, this could be staged, etc., etc. I don't buy that argument. I think there is a clear rift happening, and the reason for the rift is I'll explain. The the events, basically the chronology of the events. I think Trump was sold this fantasy of regime change by Netanyahu when he led him into the war. And Trump realized that the war had gone wrong and he wanted to get out of the war. So, Trump had been trying to talk to the Iranians and reach a deal with the Iranians. And they finally reached a deal with the Iranians. You read the text of the agreement, the Article 1 of the MOU states that there has to be a ceasefire on all fronts. That means including Lebanon. To have a ceasefire in Lebanon, you need Netanyahu on board. But Netanyahu on the other side realizes that the only card he has to sabotage this agreement is to step up fighting in Lebanon. And that's what the Israelis are doing. And we can argue that, okay, like Mark Levin and etc., they are arguing that Israel is attacking only because Hezbollah is firing at Israel. But Hezbollah is firing at Israel because Israeli troops are there in southern Lebanon. They are occupying parts of southern Lebanon. So Israeli troops are there, Hezbollah is attacking them, and Israel is attacking them back, which means there is no ceasefire. And if there is no ceasefire, the Article 1 of the MOU, which President Trump had signed, is being violated. So Trump is here, I think, very, very angry with Prime Minister Netanyahu. Because Trump's priority is to get out of this war and focus America's diplomatic machinery on the single question that he wants to address, which is the Iranian nuclear program. I think he is pretty serious about it. He wants to address the nuclear question. Whereas Israel's focus is not only on the nuclear question. This actually takes us back to the Obama years. It's quite interesting because Trump, throughout his career, throughout his presidency, he attacked the Obama deal. He ripped apart the Obama deal. Finally, Trump went back to the same conclusion which Barack Obama reached in 2012, that American interests and Israeli interests with regard to Iran are completely different. American interest is to make sure that Iran never makes a bomb, whereas the Israeli interest is to destroy Iran's attack capabilities, bring in regime change, destability in the region. This is what Israel wants. The United States tried to do that when they launched this war. They fought 40 days, but they realized that regime change is not happening. And if you are not getting regime change, you are not going to meet any of your other objectives. Ballistic missiles, Iran's ties with Hezbollah, Hamas, Houthis. None of this is going to be addressed unless you have a regime change. And you are not going to get a regime change. So, what is your fundamental priority here? Your fundamental priority is the nuclear issue. How do you tackle the nuclear issue? Only through negotiations. That's what the Americans are trying to do. But the Israelis on the other side, they want instability in the region. They want to destabilize Iran. They want to weaken Iran's attack capability, defensive capabilities. So they want to continue the war. So there is a clear divergence of interest between the United States and the Israelis. And this divergence, you coupled with the developments because Trump wants to continue with the agreement, whereas the Israelis keep trying to torpedo the agreement by stepping up the attacks on Lebanon, that is leading to the rift. And now, whether this will lead to a permanent split between these two, I'm not sure about it. We will have to wait and see how the relationship is evolving. This is a deeply entrenched relationship. Even now, you see the kind of attacks Trump and Vance are throwing in from the neocons, the Israel lobby, and the right-wing podcasters in the United States. The same lot of guys who were egging Trump into the war, who were praising Trump like anything, like he was the messiah of the United States and Israel, etc., etc. They have all turned against Trump now, overnight. Right? So Trump is facing enormous heat from the neoconservatives and the Israel lobby in the United States. And a future American president will also do that. But at the same time, what works in favor of Trump here is the same point that we discussed earlier, the public opinion. The public opinion, which was decisively in favor of Israel on past occasions, have turned against Israel. And Trump is also facing a revolt within his own base, in his MAGA base, like Tucker Carlson and then Kante Owens and a lot of other people, Meghan Kelly, they have all turned against, basically, they have all turned critical of Israel. So, there is some kind of a backing which Trump is also enjoying at this point of time for the latest turn of events.
It's very significant, whatever we are watching play out right now. But, when it comes to the Israeli reactions, Stanley, the disproportionate response, what J.D. Vance, in fact, referred to, saying that you cannot basically kill your way out of every national security challenge. This goes back all the way to the 50s itself. That village in Kibia in West Bank under then Jordan, of course, so all the way in 53 under Ariel Sharon too, when the killing of one Jewish woman and her two children, the IDF retaliated by killing of an entire sort of a village, just went in there. So this has been a problem. And today also, when you look at the reactions, Netanyahu trying to frame it by saying that I'm basically attacking Hezbollah, but he's allowing the Smotriches, the Ben Gavirs in the cabinet to come out and continue to attack Trump and Vance. And we have seen Ben Gavir's, in fact, reaction also to the J.D. Vance statements, where again he's saying that for every single Israeli killed, we will burn down at least 1,000 Lebanese and we will burn down the villages. So do you really expect the Israelis to behave anyway? Yeah. Do you expect them to behave anywhere else?
I think my assessment is that, or rather, I believe that at some point of time, Israel will have to do some course correction, because right now Israel is in trouble and Israel is digging deeper. The Israel's elite are not realizing it, or rather they are incapable of doing anything else. But the writing on the wall is clear. They can't continue to defy public opinion, international public opinion in the United States, public opinion in Europe and in other countries, other allies. And in the global south, Israel clearly doesn't have any friend. I mean, maybe except India. India maintains good bilateral relationship with Israel. But otherwise, Israel stands pretty much isolated. What J.D. Vance said yesterday, that Donald Trump is the only head of the state that you have got, which is correct in one way or the other. So Israel will have to do some kind of a course correction. Because you look at Israel has been fighting everywhere. No, Israel is basically deepening the occupation in the West Bank. They still bomb Gaza. They have a military presence in southern Lebanon. They fight a war against Hezbollah in Lebanon, and they also keep. They have also taken more territories of Syria. They've been fighting everywhere. And what they wanted to do was that they ultimately wanted to get rid of the Iranian challenge as well. That has backfired. This is a massive strategic setback for them, the war. They wanted to destroy the Iranian state, Iranian regime, the Islamic Republic. And the Islamic Republic has emerged stronger, where Israel is now facing a major rift in its relationship with the United States, which is Israel's most important and valuable partner. So this is, you look at it from any point of view, this is a major setback. So I think if you are looking at the developments in West Asia from a strategic point of view, a future Israeli leader will have to reflect about the consequences of the October 7 wars and make the course correction. Will Benjamin Netanyahu do that? I don't think so. I think he is incapable of doing that. But a future Israeli prime minister will have to answer these questions. I mean, the question will start from October 7. Why did October 7 happen? On whose watch October 7 happened? I can see original sin in your background. So,
yes.
So I try to explain some of these questions in the book. So the questions would start from October 7. And Netanyahu has committed himself to protecting Israel. And October 7 happened on Netanyahu's watch. Iran war happened. Basically, Netanyahu took the war to Iran. And did it make Israel stronger, safer, more secure, more powerful? No. Israel stands isolated today. And if Israel is losing the United States, I think no. I mean, they are not going to lose the United States immediately. But even the revolt in America's right wing, the shift in the public opinion in the United States, the criticism coming out of the American elite, you put all these things together, I mean, things are not great for the Israelis. So a future Israeli prime minister will have to ask some tough questions. And I think Israel will have to withdraw from southern Lebanon. There is no other way. Because if Israel keeps its troops in southern Lebanon, Israel and Hezbollah are going to fight against each other, which means we are not going to get a ceasefire. And if you are not going to get a ceasefire, you're not going to get a final comprehensive agreement on Iran. And that's what Trump wants. So if Trump is serious about the deal, I mean, a deal means you tackle Iran's nuclear program, you give them sanctions relief. That's the final deal is all about. Because the Iranians should downblend the highly enriched uranium they have. And they should also make some concessions on their enrichment rights. And they should also open up their nuclear facilities for the IAEA. And IAEA has to be there when you downblend the uranium. If you want to get all these things done, I mean, which means you need a ceasefire in Lebanon. So how will you get a ceasefire in Lebanon as long as the Israeli troops continue the occupation of southern Lebanon? So I think at some point of time, Israelis will have to leave Lebanon and Israelis will have to reassess their security doctrine. The problem with Israel's foreign policy, my professor used to tell me, that Israel is a country that doesn't have a foreign policy. Israel only has a security policy. This is exactly what Vance said yesterday. You can't look at everything through that security prism. You need to do your diplomacy as well, right?
It's interesting because Vance, in another statement that he made in that podcast, he was asked that, do you trust the Israelis and Israel? He said, I don't trust anybody when it comes to international affairs. So truly, I think this administration is slowly waking up to the fact that it has to be an America first policy, not an Israel first policy or any other policy. So my final question to you, Stanley, and you referred to this in a tweet that you posted, that if in fact Netanyahu is not relenting, Trump should do what Eisenhower did during the Suez War, or what Carter or Reagan did during the Camp David talks. There are lessons in history, but history repeats itself too often, it seems, especially in this region. So really, I mean, is this Israeli regime sort of comparable to the Ariel Sharons who had their own problems? Or this is even if it's not a Netanyahu, it's a far right, in fact, other successive leadership option that you're looking at that makes it so much more problematic. And 3 announced so-called ceasefire negotiations brokered by US between Israel and Lebanon, and still you see this continuing. So is there also a possibility of the Hezbollah relocating, Hezbollah moving away?
Hezbollah is not going anywhere. I don't think Hezbollah will go anywhere. Because Israel is, in 2024, when there was actual fighting between Israel and Hezbollah, when you saw that story about pager explosions and the killing of Hassan Nasrallah, etc., etc., the Israelis actually thought that they defeated Hezbollah. That's why they went after Iran. They thought they defeated Hezbollah. They got a regime change in Syria. So the link between Hezbollah and Iran was cut off. So this is the opportunity. So in June last year, exactly a year ago, the Israelis bombed Iran. And then they went back again earlier this year, in February. But Hezbollah has proved them wrong. Hezbollah is not defeated. Hezbollah got a major setback, but they regrouped and they are now fighting back. Instead of suicide bombers, they used suicide bombers back in the 1980s. Today, they are using suicide drones. They are using this optical fiber drones, FPV drones, to attack the Israelis. And even yesterday, Israeli troops came under fire, right? So Israelis want to create what they call a security zone in southern Lebanon. This is something they did in the 1980s and then it failed. 1982, they went to Lebanon. They created their security zone, which turned out to be the non-security zone. So they stuck to it for 18 years, but eventually in 2000, the Israelis had to pull back from Lebanon. And it was actually from the Israeli pullback that Hezbollah gained some kind of legitimacy, nationalist legitimacy within Lebanon. Today, the Hezbollah narrative is that we are the only force that is standing between Israel and Beirut, because the Lebanese military cannot fight the Israeli troops. And the Lebanese prime minister is speaking as if, he speaks Netanyahu's language today. You just listen to him. It would look like the Iranians have come and occupied Israeli land, whereas southern Lebanon is controlled by the Israelis. So Hezbollah's narrative is that what Hezbollah is trying to sell to its base is that we are the ones who are standing between Israeli troops and you. So Hezbollah is not going to go anywhere. Hezbollah is going to be there. Rather, the Israelis will have to withdraw from southern Lebanon. So that's my whole argument. And American presidents had used pressure tactics in the past effectively. I refer to Eisenhower. So during the Suez crisis, the Israelis were asked to pull back from Sinai. And Israeli Prime Minister Ben-Gurion was the Prime Minister. He, of course, resisted any calls. And Eisenhower said that if we are not going to pull back, we are going to cut off all the aid. And the Soviet leader Nikita Khrushchev said that if we are not going to pull back, we are going to face Soviet rockets. And the Israelis actually pulled back. And when the Camp David Agreement was signed, Menachem Begin was the prime minister. Menachem Begin is a right-wing. He was the Likud party guy. He is Netanyahu's, godfather. In a sense, Netanyahu's predecessor. He's the guy who led Likud. And Menachem Begin was the prime minister. And Carter effectively arm twisted him into accepting the Camp David Agreement, as part of which the Israelis agreed to pull back their troops from the entire Sinai Peninsula, handing it back to the Israelis. And again, in 1982, after the bombing of Beirut, you could still see the New York Times page one where President Reagan, and Reagan is the Republican president, right? President Reagan has he threatened to suspend supply of offensive weapons to the Israelis unless Israel pulled back from Beirut. So the American presidents had used their leverage effectively to arm twist Israel and then force them into withdrawal or corrective measures. So President Trump can also do that if he wants to do that. You will see all kind of bragging and boasting on Twitter saying that Israel will stand on its own. If Israel has to stand alone, Israel will do that. And Indian television anchors were saying that Israel is proving what strategic autonomy is. Okay, you can make all these arguments in your comfort zone, but at the end of the day, Israel is Israel because it has the backing, political, diplomatic, monetary, and military backing of the United States, which is the world's most powerful country.
But my only concern here would be that I think the Israelis also kind of see through a lot of times that these threats are made, but they're not really implemented into action. I mean, look at the Europeans, Giorgia Meloni, constantly talking about how the Israelis have crossed red lines in Gaza, but Italy and Germany still remain the two countries that are actually ensuring that the European Union does not cut off its military aid and military, in fact, partnership with Israel. So maybe the Israelis realize that a lot of these threats that are being made will eventually only prove to be just rhetoric.
Yeah, possible. And they would also try to use the Lebanon card to torpedo the agreement. So that's why I think the Iranians should also show some kind of strategic restraint. They shouldn't resort to any overreaction, because they should realize that Netanyahu's interest lies in the resumption of the conflict. And right. Europeans will always make a lot of noise. I don't take them seriously when it comes to Israel and Palestine, because I think on the one side their leverage is limited, but on the other side they make a lot of public posturing, moral lessons, sermons, etc., etc. But when it comes to actual action, they do nothing, right? Even in the United States, I'm not talking about the moral side of the Trump administration, but I think there is an interest. Trump administration, the actual interest of the administration is to end the war and address the nuclear program, get out of West Asia, this particular conflict zone, and focus on America's primary security interests. For that, Israel today poses a challenge. So that right. could actually force the president of the United States to use his leverage. He could say that he could delay supplies, arms supplies, or aid. I mean, if he wants to do that, he has the leverage. So the question is whether Trump wants to do that, whether Trump wants to arm twist Israel into withdrawing from southern Lebanon. But that's the way forward. If he wants to save this deal, if he wants a ceasefire on all fronts, he should force the Israelis to withdraw from southern Lebanon.
Okay, we will leave it there. Of course, this is a story that will continue to remain very important. The ceasefire, the Islamabad MOU continues to remain very volatile and anything could happen. But let's just hope that for now, at least, this breathing space that has been created for the world, that remains and better sense prevails. Many thanks, Stanley Johny, for joining me here. And reminder to the audiences, you saw this book, The Original Sin by Stanley. Of course, this is not his first book, and we are expecting, in fact, some very interesting books. So soon I have some confidential information that I'm privy to that I'm not going to share here. But thank you so much, Stanley, for joining me here in this chat.
Thanks, Smita. Pleasure. Always a pleasure.
Thanks for all those who tuned in. Goodbye and take care.